finally, the talk has come back to podcast. I'm Justin Perkins. This is Talk Junkie, and this is the 100th episode of Talk Junkie. We started with a wrestling episode. It was our first episode ever, and so that introduction is a slight homage to The Rock, just to kind of take it full circle and back. It's been a long time since I've got the opportunity or had the desire to record a podcast. I take that back. It's not that I didn't want to record it, that I didn't have the desire to record it. I just didn't want to talk about the things that were going on for different reasons. And anyway, a lot of reasons and a lot of things that I had to do personally and stuff that was going on. It got us to this point. And so I took all the notes and listened to all the old shows and did all these things to do the 100th episode. And here I am on the road without those notes and without the ability to go back over any of that stuff whatsoever. So we'll just do what we always do, and we'll just wing it. The podcast started really over a year and a half ago, I guess now by this point. The podcast started initially with just the desire for me to do the podcast. And it initially started out as two podcasts. Stuff I Like podcast, I believe is one, and The Other Four Horsemen. That was going to be the other podcast. The Stuff I Like was going to be just a collection of stuff with some guests. Basically, it was going to be a lot like what Talk Junkie became. And The Other Four Horsemen was going to be myself and three other gentlemen, and we were going to talk old 80s movies and wrestling and music and things of that nature, mostly nostalgia stuff. We didn't quite make it that far. We did one episode. And I sit on that episode for a little while after I released it and really didn't promote a whole lot or do anything. And then, I said a long time actually, I guess, I decided we couldn't get everybody together. It wasn't something that they were passionate about or wanted to do all the time. So I decided to just go solo and let that be the first episode of this podcast. So I changed the name to Talk Junkie, got us some new music, and then we went from there, and from there we get to this point, and we get to our 100th episode, and almost I think we may be to our 1,000th download on iTunes alone, and we're other places, but I don't know how to monitor and check the downloads for the other places, so I do a couple of them. Spreaker gives me pretty good analytics for their stuff, and that's what I've done. I started out with a Spreaker account, and I've used it up until this point, and I'm fairly satisfied with it. It's been pretty good. Sorry, cut out there for a minute. I had emails and I had tons of stuff that was going to be for this first episode, along with a breakdown kind of some of the other stuff. And again, I'm on the road and I don't have that with me, and this is the opportunity I've not had in at least the last 2 weeks, because I really wanted to knock this out in the last 2 weeks. But, COVID has made things all kinds of different, and I don't know. It didn't happen as quickly as I'd hoped it was going to happen. But of course, we're at our 100th episode, and it's July, and we're not a year into this thing. We're at our 100th episode, so there was a point in time there where I was really putting them out there, because I'd have to go back and look at the date, but I don't believe, I wasn't up and going 100%, I don't believe, in January. Could have been, not sure, but I believe it was maybe into February before I was, but anyway, I didn't. That would all be speculative, and there's no point in being speculative today. There's two episodes that I do want to touch on that are unique in their own way because of how they came up. I generally don't have guests, and I generally record on my phone. And the reason I don't have guests is because I record on my phone, and Spreaker's not real conducive to me having guests when I'm out on the road and traveling, Plus, it's really hard to do. Now, if I'm in the same room with someone, I can check out the computer, and I've been working with sound and quality and stuff, and I can get a guest on. I'm thinking about using a different setup, but anyway, there is the other Four Horsemen episode, the first episode of Talk Junkie. If you go to our library, either our library on YouTube, I believe it's on YouTube, or our library on Apple, on iTunes, Spreaker, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast. If you go to the library, our first episode is The Other Four Horsemen, or my first episode is The Other Four Horsemen, and it was the three other gentlemen, and that was the first episode with guests, and it was the last episode with guests for a while. There is a second episode with a guest. I kind of had my son on with me just as a fun thing, because it's fun to do stuff with him and let him talk about stuff. He's like me. He really likes to talk. So there's actually an episode where I interview my son, and it is the only other episode currently with a guest on it. But it's not available on the YouTube channel. And if you listen to the show or on YouTube, then you've never heard that episode. If you listen to the show on iTunes and don't know, the show's also available on YouTube. It's a complete audio version. There's no video, but it is the same exact audio version that you get on iTunes. It's just uploaded to YouTube. But because of the way in which I recorded that, and I didn't use my phone, and it wasn't set to auto sync and things of that nature, that episode never made it to YouTube. So the episode of myself and my son is not on YouTube. It's only available on iTunes and the other distribution platforms, Google and things of that nature. On the other hand, one of my other favorite episodes, and one I really enjoyed doing, and one I've really thought about for a long time, called The Great Migration. There was a little glitch, if you will, with my Spreaker on my phone, the app on my phone. And when I was uploading that, I didn't realize that it went through. I thought it had fully went through. And I didn't realize that it was available on iTunes and everything already. And it kept popping up to queue. So my plan was to stop the upload and redo it. But for whatever reason, it deleted that. So the only way you can find The Great Migration now is on YouTube. And it really is. If you like the more serious ones and the ones maybe Eastern Kentucky themed, it's a good conversation starter, and it's a good kind of little, thought process thing that I went through. I really liked that episode. But if you don't listen on YouTube, you've probably never heard it. It was up on iTunes, but when I deleted that to try to re-upload, I lost the whole episode. And YouTube preserved it, but iTunes did not. Nor did Spreaker. To my knowledge, it's not available on any of the podcast platforms. It's only available on YouTube. So that's two episodes that are very unique. Well, three, we've talked about that first episode. And someone had asked, and I don't remember now because I don't have my notes, how I got to the count of 100, because they had counted episodes that I would say, some episodes have the number in it, blah, 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 don't. Some of them don't. And they were like, you've put out 100 things, but you didn't call them all episodes, and that's correct, technically. This is what happened. When I originally started recording, I kind of had two time options based on the program that I'm using and the service that I have. That was a 15-minute, I believe, and a 45-minute. And I decided to go with the 45-minute platform to be full episodes and the 15 minutes to be what I called minicast. But I could never change the episode numbering. It just completely kept kicking me back. And I realized I was putting just as much work sometimes into the 15-minute cast, and they were getting just as good of reaction. So I just started considering the mini cast as just episodes. They were just short episodes in comparison to long episodes. But Spreaker itself has always numbered these no matter what. Like, I wanted to start running ads for certain episodes, just, a little 30-second, 60-second thing, pop it up and go, hey, this is blah, 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 blah. But I'd realized this by this point, that my short episodes, everything was going in that count. So I don't do that, and I don't do stuff like that. I'll do stuff like that on my YouTube page, but I don't do that because I don't want to add to the episode count unless it's an actual episode. So I went back and I looked at each one, and even though there were some short ones, I thought everything justified being an episode. And so that put our actual count in sync with them. So that makes today the actual 100th episode, and that's how we got to that point. Now, there is a point to where, I don't know, this is an example, I didn't look, but say I didn't count the first 3 mini casts, so say on episode 10, if it was a full episode, I'm saying it's episode 7. And that's just a change that I come to later. In regards to, this is something I wanted to talk about, especially on this, considering that I'm super pumped that it's the 100th episode, and it means a lot to me, and it's cool to me, and by the time this releases, I'll hit the 1,000 downloads with iTunes, I believe, and so, or at least after this, so it's probably going to void out being able to do a 1,000 down, but that doesn't really matter. But going back and looking at analytics and trying to figure out what was the most popular episode, that was kind of hard to do. And I emailed some people, and I found out there is supposed to be a breakdown I can look at and see that. And I really would have liked to have that for the 100th episode, but I don't. And I'm going to maybe do a follow-up about the podcast, just stuff that's podcast specific in that regards. And when I do, we will look at that, because it's something I'm really curious about. And the problem really is getting all of the analytics from across the board from every platform. That seems to be the problem, because there's an episode, I think it's what a lovely yard you have or lawn you have, something to that effect. That episode is a really strong contender, and it did really well. Obviously, I think the later episodes are going to do better, just based on my viewership is drastically increased, or listening, number of people listening has drastically increased since, say, the 4th or 5th episode. But that first episode was shared before the podcast was first started, so it's gonna bode very well. So I don't know. It's going to be fun for me to kind of sit down and dig that out. But I tried to have that and have it ready for today, but finding all those analytics and kind of going and looking at everything across the board and getting everything sorted out and finding that one proved to be a little more challenging than I thought it would be. I often get the question about recommendations. That's hard for me. Any of the ones about music, Music and Memories was a good one for me. I thought The Great Migration was a good one. I mean, so many of those were just so fun to do. Like, it's hard for me to, like, on a personal level, like, my 2 favorites are The Other Four Horsemen, because I've got to hang out with some friends and do that one. It's always more fun when you can bring other people in. And then, like, just because I'm a dad, like, the one I've done with my son is obviously going to probably be my favorite. So, what's my favorite may not be your favorite. I know at least 5 of you emailed in your favorite episodes, and I can remember episodes that got mentioned, but I can't remember names. And again, I'm sorry. I printed this stuff out. I had this worked up, but I had this worked up 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and life happens. And that really bummed me out, and it made me almost not record this one today. But I was like, no, that's kind of the reason in doing the podcast to begin with, is because life happens, and I've got to take advantage of opportunities and moments when I have the ability to record. And this isn't the Joe Rogan podcast. Like, I'm not to that level. I'm not, I don't have $100 million deal with a company, and it's not my livelihood. It's not what I'm doing. It's something I do for fun. So it's what I'm able to do today. I can do it, and but it was, I don't know, it was important to me to go ahead and get that 100 in two ways. One, like, there's the, wow, it's my 100th episode. I want to get it recorded, and I want to get it out there, and I want it to be good. And that's the way I really felt for that whole week, recording 98, 99, 97. When I was recording those episodes, like, I was truly excited for that week to be recording those. Like, it felt good, and I mean, I don't know, I was extremely excited about it. But as these weeks have went on, it's not as, I don't know, I don't feel like it's a time, I don't know, I'm not in a celebrating mood, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and I'm not extremely, like, jovial about most of it, and it's not going to be down, and I'm not depressed over it, but some of it, I lose heart with what people say, and how they act, and so that took kind of some of the fun out of it. And then it got to the point to where, to be honest with you, right here, right now, like, I'm 40%, man, this is my 100th episode, and I'm so excited that it's my 100th episode. Like, I really feel that way. But also, in this very moment, 60% of me is like, man, it's my 100th episode. It needs to be good, and it needs to be great, and I just need it over with. Because 101, I can go back to normal, and I can not feel pressure. And it's weird that I allowed a podcast I do for fun, something that I don't take serious, something that's just a hobby of mine, a passion of mine. I took it and let it become something that I kind of worried about and dreaded. And, like I said, that week when I recorded the last 2 or 3 episodes before this, and advertised for it, I felt really good. Really good. And I was excited to do it. And then I got a little hesitant about doing it because things just kept happening. The time, at the point when I was doing the last 2 or 3 up to this, was right around the point that Mr. Floyd was murdered by the police officer. And, that got me thinking about that stuff. And I don't know, different things happened. And it got me to the point to where I wasn't excited about doing the 100th episode. So I was kind of bummed. And then I thought, well, you know what? My book's coming out. I need to promote the book, and I didn't really do that either. And it kind of bummed me out. I've got an episode coming up about the book. I'm super stoked about the book, and it released July 1st. It's exclusively at the Red Spotted Newt, READ, Red Spotted Newt in Hazard, Kentucky right now. It's the only place you can get it. Tentatively, we're doing a signing around August 1st at the Newt, or with the Newt in some nearby area. I don't know where. And hopefully, if things continue, I'm going to be doing it with another author. I don't want to mention a name because maybe it'll fall through. I don't know, but I'm actually related to them, so that's cool, and that'll be cool for me. When I get definites and all this stuff, Mandy will probably listen to this episode. She can send me a definite times and all those things, and I'll actually advertise something for once and get it out there. But that kind of, I kind of tried to make that my motivation to finish that 100th episode. I was like, look, it could be a dual thing, you know, because by this point I was getting closer to July 1st, the release date, you know, because we were doing pre-orders through June, and I was like, okay, maybe I could take and do like a joint thing, my 100th episode with the book release, and it just didn't feel good, and it didn't feel right, and I think that's more important. It was more important than rushing it, and you're not getting right now today the same episode I was planning for you for the 100th. You just weren't getting it, and I do believe at some point down the road, maybe at 150, I'll stop and do a retrospective and look back and do it the way that I planned on doing this episode, but life didn't work out that way, you know. And I let myself get a little bummed, and I let myself get a little down, and then I worked myself back up, and I think that's more important, you know. I really think it matters more. And there were episodes that I wanted to do far more than I wanted to do this episode. And there were ideas that I was putting on the back burner and not recording at that moment in time, which is the best way to do these, that I was losing out on those things because I was kind of waiting for this one, and it became a burden, and it shouldn't have been, but it did. It became a burden, and it became, you know, what are you going to do? How are you going to make this episode big and important? And this episode's not going to be big and important. Most episodes are not going to be big and important. It's hopefully going to be entertaining. It's hopefully going to be insightful. It's going to be a thought exercise, and it's going to be something that, you know, you guys can send emails and stuff on, because the mailbag episode is the big thing. I have those notes because they're in a different notebook, and they're not printed out like the other stuff was. I have those, and you know, sometime this week I'm going to sit down and record that one and do another mailbag. I've got a couple different ones I want to do. But I wanted to do this 100th, and I wanted to acknowledge it, and I wanted my 100th to be about the 100th episode, and about where I started from to where I got to, you know. There's different ways I can check how many subscribers and things of that nature. That's one number I don't generally check, because I don't want to know for sure how many people I'm talking to, you know. I mean, I've got an idea. I know what it's more than. And I've got an idea of maybe what it's less than. But that's not how I want to determine success. And that's why I feel like maybe this, the whole 1,000 download thing is just something that I just need to glance at and go on with iTunes, because it's not how I want to determine if I do this podcast or not. I think I should do the podcast because I enjoy the podcast. I think I should do the podcast because the podcast is fun. And I think I should do the podcast because it's a new way of interacting with people. It's a new way to have conversations. And conversations with people I don't actually know and don't really, you know, my friends will respond, and people I know will respond, and I'll have conversations from the podcast space with that, and that's awesome. You know, that made this worth doing in the beginning, and still worth doing. But now, you know, if one of my friends is like, you know, let's discuss this, and we talk about it in person or via chat or email, but then I also get the point of view from somebody I don't know, somebody not from around here, somebody who has a completely different point of view on it, and they're coming at it from a completely different place. Well, that is truly valuable, and that's something that I didn't really anticipate coming from this. And at 100 episodes, at 99 episodes, I noticed something different in the response to the episodes. At episode 1 to say 10, there was very little interaction. And then, from probably 10 up, there's a lot of friends reacting. And, one person listens to it quite a bit, and we discuss a lot about it. And then there's two friends that I did podcasts of theirs. I would be on with them, and they would listen to my podcast, and I would listen to their podcast, and it was mainly this circle of people that you kind of get input from anyway, and you talk to anyway, and it's super supportive, and it's it's not really critical, but it's honest, and these people. But by episode 99, looking at emails, I would say 90% of the emails that I was getting were from people I didn't know. And that was a huge shift in how I viewed this thing. So at episode 1, it was a couple of friends doing a podcast more or less to entertain themselves and some of their friends. By episode 100, it's doing a podcast trying to reach people and have people reach out and respond and talk to me. And that was a big deal to me. Like that was a sobering reminder to me. Especially because since the time that from the time that episode 99 was put up to right now, wow, email's full. Mailbag's not going to be a problem. It may be a multiple episode mailbag. Mailbag's not going to be a problem. And I don't remember who it was now, but someone said they felt like they got abandoned because I didn't do an episode for so long. Well, you're not abandoned. You are loved. And here's episode 100. And it's not the grand celebration that maybe we all anticipated, including myself. But it's a realistic version of how I feel. And that's what this thing has to be. It has to be who and what I am at the moment in time that I'm there. Because that makes it honest. And if it's not honest, then, what's really the point in you listening to it and me doing it? Because it is how I feel. I don't know. But we've talked about a lot of things from episode 1 till here. There's ones that I like the poetry one that others probably won't like, and the movie ones, things of that nature, things that are special to me that may not be to others. One of the funnest ones I've done was the USA Up All Night one, where we looked at the USA Network, what it had growing up. It's like that. Those nostalgia ones are super fun, and there's been serious ones, and sometimes the serious ones are fun. Sometimes they're needed, and sometimes they feel good to me. And look, there will be serious ones going forward, and that was something that before I did 100, I wanted to sit down and decide, okay, because the thought had crossed me, I always said I don't ever want it to be political, but everything's kind of political, and I've let it get political a few times, and I'm okay with that. I think I had a hard time admitting to myself and to other people how I felt. I am not a Republican, and I am not a Democrat. I despise you both and despise you equally. I see absolutely, positively no difference from Obama to Trump to Bush to Reagan to Cheney to Biden. I see no difference whatsoever. I see no lesser evil, which is the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. I just see the people who hurt us and do bad to us continually being put back in charge. And people don't like to hear that. People who want to say, well, but during Trump this happened and this and this and this, and we're in a better place than we've ever been. That's because you want to see yourself in a great place. And in some ways, some people are in a great place. But those people probably would have been in the same place under any president. Their place in life didn't really change, not because of the president. Their perspective on where they were in life changed because of their loyalties to a tribe that has no loyalty to them. And for those of you who want to say, well, under Obama this wouldn't have happened and that wouldn't have happened, we drone bombed so many people under Obama, it's ridiculous. And African Americans did not flourish in any way, shape, or form under Obama. It's things you tell yourself to feel better about decisions you've made, and it's things you tell yourself to feel better about affiliations and alliances you have. None of those people are out to help you or save you or do right by you. It's just not the way it is. So I accepted that I could say that, and I could feel that way, and I could make it political. And some people aren't going to like it, and that's okay. You don't have to like everything. You definitely don't have to be offended by everything, but you don't have to like everything. It's not a requirement. You don't have to agree with everything. Have your own opinion. Have an opinion opposing to mine. It's okay. I get my opinion changed all the time. Not very often when it comes to politics, but I get it changed all the time when it comes to other. Let's look at the coronavirus. I've had my opinion changed numerous times. Because new information pops up and new things become clear. And when it does, if you can't change and adapt, you change and adapt, and you say, okay, I changed and I came from here to here and this is why. You can't pretend you felt the same way the whole time, or you can't pretend. I mean, there's people that have, no doubt. There's people that, no matter how serious it is, they would never admit it, ever, and have always been that way. But that goes back to a political alliance. And no matter how blown out of proportion it may end up being, if it is, there's people who will never, ever admit it, and never would have. But it's a political affiliation. So while those people are debating politics on a medical matter, I would prefer to discuss the science on the medical matter. And the real science. Not Bill Nye's face mask Instagram videos, and, not, oh, but look what China did, and not what the World Health Organization thinks. Real scientific data, and those things change, and a hypothesis, look up the definition. Don't take my word for it. Because that's what you're working off of right now. You're working off of theory. But I thought long and hard before recording 100. Do I only want to do the fun ones going forward? Do I only want to do the serious ones? Can it work? Can I mix them? And yeah, I can. Because, again, I'm not a professional. I don't do this for a living. I can technically do whatever I want. And you'll just either keep listening or stop. So, some of you will keep listening just out of pity. Some of you will keep listening because you enjoy it. Some of you, at least 2 of you I know, maybe 3. 1 of you I'm on the fence about. Well, keep listening just because you don't like me and don't like what I have to say and want me to say something that you disagree with so you can jump on it and go, but you said this, and we can have 3-hour or 3-day email battles. And that's okay, because that's what I want to do. I have recorded a couple episodes of another podcast that I was going to launch, Tenfold Skeptic. And I'm almost to the point of bringing those here. and just having it be fun. And I'll tell you why I didn't. Up to this point, and this may change. Because when looking back at the 400, those 3 episodes would not match in with the 99 I've done up until today. Because even with the conspiracy theory ones I've done them clearly as a joke. And these would be clearly a joke. But too much of that content, and when you get on specific things, especially topics that I've touched on in those 3 episodes, then you get to a point to where people kind of may get the wrong perception of what you're doing. And I'm not trying to cater to anyone, but I look at it myself. Well, even if you did listen to 3 in a row, and that was the 3 you listened to, what kind of impression would I get? So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with those. If I'm going to launch this other show, or if I'm going to, because it's not a serious conspiracy show, really. I mean, but it could be, and I don't know. But as of episode 100, it's not part of this show yet, and that's okay. And I thought about doing this show with different segments and different, and I did that with the mini cast and things of that nature. Certain ones were mini casts and certain ones were podcast episodes, and I want to make changes and I want to make things better and more fun, and so, by the time you listen to 101 or 102 or 103, send in some comments and, what do you like about the podcast? What don't you like about the podcast? And to all of you who took the time to send in your favorite episodes, I'm sorry that I didn't print out. I did print out the emails and I don't have them with me. I should have wrote it down in a notebook like I do for every other episode. And I wanted to be professional, and I wanted to, because when I write down the questions, I don't write down the whole email, and I have to think, well, how did they word that and how did they say that? So I thought for the 100th episode, I'll print them all out. But this is where we're at, and I think I've fairly well explained why we're there. Just from, and this is a non-scientific, I didn't use any laboratories or mathematicians or highfalutin figuring to get to this point. But far and away, the most successful episode I had was probably Music and Memories, as far as getting responses way after the episode was recorded. I don't know why, but that just seems to be the case. And I can't remember if it was 97 or 98, maybe it was 99. The one about the importance of breathing, I think it was. I got a lot of comments and kind of reaction there, and I don't know. We're going to talk about comments and reactions coming up because it's very vital in what people are really thinking. But have a wonderful day. I'm so glad I got to do episode 100. I hope you're not disappointed that it's not this big grand thing. It was going to be, but I don't think it needed to be. I think it got to be exactly what it should have been. And now it's done, and now we can get back to life as usual. Don't suck. Don't die. Be good to